I woke to the clanging alarm of the old clock on my nightstand, but today everything felt different. The weak winter light of New York filtered through the curtains of the Upper East Side mansion and fell across my face. Out of habit, I raised a hand to smooth my thick silver hair, the pride of a woman who'd weathered so much, but my fingers met a slick, raw scalp instead. The stench of antiseptic stung my nose and snapped me fully awake. My heart pounded as if someone were punching me in the chest. Today is my son's wedding day, James's wedding and I. Elizabeth Harper, the famed Manhattan real estate CEO, am lying here with a shaven head. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat up, my body trembling with a surge of rage and a quieter, deeper ache. On the pillow lay a white scrap of paper with a safety pin, the handwriting neat and falsely cheerful. Congratulations at last. You have a hairstyle appropriate for your age. A crude heart beneath it like a final taunt. I picked up the note and caught the scent of expensive perfume the French rose Olivia, my future daughter-in-law, always wears. I didn't need to guess. I knew who did this. Olivia, beautiful, ambitious, stepped into James's life 2 years ago and began pushing me out of the family circle I'd spent a lifetime building. Tears threatened, but I swallowed them back. No, I will not let them win. Not today, the day I should be standing tall proud to be the groom's mother at the famed St. Patrick's Cathedral. I stared into the mirror above the marble sink bathed in warm golden light. The woman in the glass wasn't Elizabeth Harper, the woman who raised towers across Manhattan from luxury residences to bustling malls. She was someone humiliated to the core. My scalp was red and burning from chemicals. My silver hair, the emblem of my strength after decades in a man's world, was gone. My life unspooled like a slow-motion reel. At 32, my husband William died suddenly of a heart attack on the highway outside the city. I stood in a hospital corridor holding 12-year-old James while he sobbed, "Mom, where did Dad go?" I had no answer. Only a vow whispered in the midnight dark on our shabby sofa while my son slept tear-streaked. "You will never go without. I will make sure of it." And I kept that vow. Alone, I hurled myself into real estate, starting with tiny broker gigs, knocking on creaking brownstones in Brooklyn, persuading owners to sell. Mornings running to job sites through sleet nights, wide-eyed over contracts. I skipped meals to buy James's books and lied when he asked, "Aren't you eating with me?" "I already ate, sweetheart." "You go ahead." From a poor widow I built Harper Real Estate, first the duplex in Queens, my hand trembling as I signed, terrified but hopeful. Then brick by brick buildings rose, a Times Square retail center, an office tower on Wall Street. Every win was sweat, sleeplessness, and tears. James grew up cushioned new cars, elite tuition, never knowing the price of a shirt. I thought I was compensating for the father he'd lost. Only now do I see I raised a prince who never learned to wield a sword. At 25, he said, mild as a breeze, "Mom, I want my own condo. Can you handle the down payment?" I nodded and signed without question. At 30, he brought Olivia home and announced, "We want a luxury Europe trip. Can you cover it?" Not a request, a command with a smile. And Olivia? From the first day, I felt the chill in her eyes, beautiful, glib, spinning tales of travel, fashion, and career plans to dazzle everyone. But to me, it was scrutiny. She tossed barbed pleasantries at family dinners. "Mrs. Harper, that color ages. You try something fresher." James laughed along his fiancée's shadow. I chewed my salad and swallowed the scratches in my chest. I stayed silent, afraid of losing my son. I thought if I gave more, I was more generous. Maybe he'd remember a mother's love. That's why I prepared the massive wedding gift, $22 million shares and assets, my last thread to bind us. This morning, that illusion shattered. I rose, went to the bedroom safe, and took out the envelope of documents. The paper's edge bit my palm like a knife. I clenched it, then set it back and spun the dial. Decision made, not a single dollar leaves. I called Thomas Reynolds, our longtime family attorney. He picked up on the second ring. "Elizabeth, are you ready to sign the transfer? I have everything prepared." My voice was calm. "Thomas, postpone it. Not a dime moves. Come to my house after tonight's reception. We're rewriting the will." Silence. Is something wrong? I closed my eyes, just one thing. I've finally woken up. I hung up and opened the wardrobe. My body still trembled, but a small flame had caught in my chest. Olivia could shave my head but couldn't steal the pride, and will I forged over decades. I chose the navy silk dress I'd bought to celebrate the Midtown 30-story deal. Cool fabric slid under my fingers like the memory of victory. Today it wasn't a dress, it was armor. The phone rang. Maria, my hairdresser of 20 years. I kept my voice level. Maria, I need you now. Bring your best wig. Tell no one. She didn't ask why. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited, I sat at the window and watched snow dust the brick paths I've walked 1,000 times. Memories crashed over me. The day I buried my husband with James asleep in my arms, the vow not to let my child fear or want the rise from tiny flats to vast malls. And now all of it is nearly falling into the hands of someone who sees me as surplus. The doorbell rang. Maria came in with a long black case. Seeing my head, she clapped a hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Ms. Harper." I cut her off with a thin smile. "Don't ask. Just help me stand tall today." An hour later, a soft, natural silver wig framed my face. When I lifted the mirror, I shivered. The woman looking back was cool and keen, the Elizabeth Harper my counterparts once respected. I paid Maria with a thick envelope and walked her out. Alone again, I tucked a pocket voice recorder into my bag. Instinct said words without proof wouldn't save anyone today. It was 10 a.m., 3 hours to the ceremony. I breathed in, closed my eyes. The war had begun with my hand on a raw scalp. The ending would be mine to write. I put on the gray cashmere coat and scarf James gave me 10 years ago, a keepsake that now scraped like a dull blade. "My son," I told myself today, "you'll see how badly you misjudged me." The cold New York wind slapped my cheeks outside, but I didn't flinch. I raised my collar, adjusted the wig, and slid into the car. The driver glanced at me in the mirror, about to speak. I shook my head. I needed quiet to feed the flame I'd kindled. On the drive to the cathedral, I watched couples holding hands and parents leading children across the street. I wondered how many had been betrayed by those closest to them. How many mothers were used, love was repackaged as expected. The car stopped at the steps. I laid a palm to my chest and found not a tremor but a strange steadiness, the strength of truth of a woman shoved to the edge who refuses to break. I opened the door, stepped out, and smiled. That smile wasn't for the crowd, James, or Olivia. It was for me. Elizabeth Harper awakened this morning with a bald head and a mind clearer than ever. If this story reaches you, if you've known the knife of family betrayal, like, subscribe, and follow for the next chapter. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story deserves to be heard. Together we'll trace Elizabeth's journey to freedom. Don't miss it. While waiting for Maria to arrive with the wig, I sat by the window in the worn leather chair, watching snow drift across the mansion's garden. With its cream walls and granite fireplace, this house once signified success. Now it only summoned painful memories. I closed my eyes, and the current of the past carried me off not to a few isolated moments, but to an entire road where I traded youth, health, and heart for my son's smile. Once the reason I breathed James, my only child, has become the sharpest blade. I remember that fateful day not as a death certificate, but as the instant my world collapsed. I was discussing expanding our fledgling brokerage with William in our tiny Brooklyn office. He smiled, warm, even-toothed. "We'll build an empire, love." Then the hospital called. His heart stopped on the Hudson Parkway, mid-traffic, mid-life. I drove there, gripping the wheel, tears blurring the lanes. In a sterile hallway, the doctor shook his head. 12-year-old James stood beside me, eyes wide with fear. He clung to me and whispered, "He's coming back, right?" What could I say? Holding his small, shaking body, I carved a vow into my heart. I will be everything for you. You will not suffer as I did. The early years after the funeral were hell. We moved into a damp little house in Queens with a leaking roof. William left just enough to pay debts, not a future. I had no fancy degree, no safety net. I knocked on weathered doors in struggling neighborhoods, by day coaxing reluctant owners to sell. My heels wore thin on wet concrete. Late afternoons, I sprinted from site to site, clothes gritty with dust. At night, while James slept, I sat under the buzzing kitchen light with library books, teaching myself to read financials. Columns swam before my eyes, but I bit down hard. Learn so that you can protect him. Some nights I cried in the dark after a rejection, then wiped my face and warmed milk before dawn. Sacrifice wasn't just the job. It seeped into every meal, every sleep. I skipped lunch to save for his math books. "Mom, why are you so thin?" he'd ask. I'd smooth his hair. "I'm fine, eat up." My stomach growled while his plate was complete, making me feel sated. During holidays, I worked extra hours for gifts, the first bike, and a favorite soccer kit. James grew up in that shelter, never scavenging stale bread from the back of a cupboard like I had as a child. By 15, he changed, less the obedient boy, more demanding. Everyone has the new sneakers. I bought them thinking I was patching the hole a father leaves. Then came bigger asks, pricey phones, summers in Florida. I gave in because his smile quieted my loneliness. Then came the empire. From the first shaky duplex paperwork in Brooklyn to the first Manhattan high-rise, each brick soaked in my sweat. I argued with male investors who sneered, rewrote contracts at 3 a.m. On graduation day at 18, I gave James a new car. "You're the best," he said, hugging me, and in his eyes I glimpsed assumption, not gratitude. Columbia tuition. I covered it. He lived like a prince, parties and travel. His happiness is enough, I told myself, even as worry gnawed. Had I taught him independence or only how to take? Then Olivia arrived like a poison wind. At 30, James brought her to dinner. She was luminous, gold hair, perfect smile, chattering about Europe and a fashion venture. I cooked his favorite Italian dishes and tried to be warm. Her gaze on me was appraising, calculating. "You work so much, Mrs. Harper. Aren't you tired? Women of a certain age should rest sugar-coated thorns." James laughed. "She's right, Mom." Something cinched in my chest. From then on, she colonized our table talk, turning me into an audience. "We should buy in the Hamptons. Your mom will help, right?" Not a question in order. I signed the checks, afraid of losing my son. Each one deepened the cut. Olivia didn't see a mother who'd bled for James. She saw a spigot. Watching the snow thicken, I understood that my sacrifices had become shackles. I gave James everything but never taught him gratitude or grit. Olivia merely revealed the crack. The bell rang Maria. I stood, brushed away tears. The era of sacrifice is over. It's time to reclaim my dignity. I will enter that church with my head high, not a victim, but a warrior. James and Olivia think they've won. They have no idea what a mother on the brink can do. Dim winter light slid through the mansion windows and frosted the oak floor. Elizabeth Harper stood before the full-length mirror, adjusting the soft silver wig Maria had just secured. It looked almost exactly like the hair she'd once worn with pride, but beneath it her scalp still throbbed, a burning reminder of Olivia's cruelty. Elizabeth drew a deep breath, eyes cool as steel. She was no longer the trembling mother from that venomous note at dawn. She was a combatant stepping into the most incredible fight of her life, not for money, but self-respect. She opened the wardrobe and drew out the navy silk dress she bought for herself after signing the Midtown 30-story tower. The fabulous fabric slid between her fingers, calling up boardrooms packed with men whose respect she had earned through brains and stamina. Today, the dress was armor, a declaration that Elizabeth Harper does not break. She zipped it slowly, feeling each seam hug the resolve blazing in her chest. She lifted the jewelry box from the vanity and fastened the pearl necklace William gave her on her 30th birthday. Her fingers skimmed each luminous bead. A memory flickered William's gentle smile, his hand clasping hers beneath the amber glow of a tiny Greenwich Village trattoria. It receded before the present, James, the boy she'd sworn to protect, now colluding with Olivia to make her a punchline. She clenched her hands until her nails bit skin. "No," she whispered to the glass. "Not today." Her phone buzzed. Maria again. Ms. Elizabeth, one more thing, I left a spare wig in your back seat. If you need it, call me. A small, honest kindness warmed her. Thank you, Maria. You always think ahead. In storms like this, there were still Maria's people who asked nothing and stood beside you. Elizabeth slipped a pocket recorder into her bag and checked the red light, armed and ready. Words alone wouldn't be enough today. They think I'm weak, she murmured. They haven't met the honest Elizabeth. She descended the marble helix of the main stair, each measured footfall like a recovered heartbeat. The house was quiet, save for the grandfather clock's patient tick. She paused before a painting of the Hamptons, the retirement dream, paint rest, sea air. The dream hadn't died. It was buried beneath the dust of sacrifice. Today, she would start digging it up. Cold air slapped her cheeks when she stepped outside, smelling snow and distant exhaust. Powder sugared the brick walkways where she once paced with little James counting leaves as they fell. The memory stabbed without drawing blood. She wound James's old cashmere scarf around her throat, no longer a symbol, just warmth. You've chosen your path, James, she thought. Now I prefer mine. The black Bentley idled at the gate. Henry, her driver, opened the door, worry cutting lines around his eyes. Are you all right, ma'am? You look different. She shook her head gently. Just drive, Henry. I need quiet. Manhattan slid by streets. People lives. She watched couples and strollers and wondered how many had been stabbed by their own. Her city rose around her glass and steel she had willed into being. Every tower a victory, every victory a scar. Her fingers closed over the recorder in her bag, not a gadget a reminder that she could still change the board. At St. Patrick's, she stepped onto granite in high heels that clicked like a metronome. A draft tugged her scarf. The wig held firm. She squared her shoulders and walked toward the stained glass glow. She smiled, not a mother's soft pride, but a woman's sharpened calm. Today, she breathed, they'll learn what a mistake it is to underestimate Elizabeth Harper. Elizabeth Harper stood motionless in the cold corridor of St. Patrick's Cathedral, her hand clamped around the black leather bag that hid a tiny recorder, its red light blinking like a second heartbeat. Stained glass light spilled across the stone floor in red, blue, and violet shards, beautiful, sharp, and broken like her life. The organ's swell mingled with the growing murmur of guests filling the nave for James and Olivia's wedding. But Elizabeth heard none of it. All she could hear was her son's voice from behind a marble column where moments ago she had accidentally overheard a devastating secret. She had stepped toward the garden for air, to cool the anger singeing her ribs since that vicious note at dawn. Passing a side hallway, she heard James, low, urgent, secretive. "Sophia, no, don't come here now," he whispered into his phone. "I told you, wait until after the ceremony." Elizabeth froze. Sophia. The name struck like a blade. Sophia Park, James's young assistant, was the bright, polite face Elizabeth had seen around the office. She had smiled at Sophia before. Now puzzle pieces clicked into place with a cruel neatness. Pressing into the cold column, Elizabeth slowed her breath. James kept talking, every word a cut. "Everything changes as soon as my mother transfers the money. We won't have to hide. Just be patient." Her blood seemed to congeal. The money. $22 million, the wedding gift she had painstakingly arranged so the newlyweds could start strong. It wasn't for a marriage at all. It was the ticket for her son to run off with his mistress, leaving Olivia Elizabeth and the life she'd built. Her fingers trembling found the recorder and clicked it on. James's voice dropped again, even more careful. "You know how my mother is. She always wants to please me. She's terrified I'll go without. Once she signs this afternoon, we'll have everything. A new start. Freedom. No strings." Elizabeth bit her lip until she tasted iron. The boy who had sobbed into her sweater when his father died now spoke of her as a bottomless wallet, a tool. She wanted to step out and shout, but experience pinned her in place. Not now, not yet. In business heat never beats a plan. Footsteps echoed from the far end. "I have to go," James said. "Be quiet, Sophia. I'll handle everything after the honeymoon." The call ended. Elizabeth slipped deeper into shadow, feigning interest in a floral display as staff hurried past. Then James appeared, smoothing his tuxedo tension flashing across his face before he fixed on the smooth smile of a happy groom. She had heard enough. Back in the pew, she sat as straight as a spear. The recorder's tiny light glowed inside her bag, faithfully holding his words. She raised her eyes to the windows where red and gold light spilled like mingled blood and hope. How does a mother face the truth that her son plans to betray not only his bride, but the very woman who bled for him? The pain didn't crush her. It fed the blaze in her chest, hardening hurt into resolve. She rested a hand on the cashmere scarf around her neck, James's gift from 10 years ago, now only a relic. She remembered the day he gave it a college kid beaming, "You deserve the best, Mom." Today, that shine had curdled into calculation. Elizabeth inhaled, letting the organ fill her ears. "You chose the wrong opponent, James," she told herself. "I am not easy prey." The recorder was her first weapon. It would not be the last. Guests trickled in. She smiled and nodded as if she were any proud mother. Inside, she rehearsed the moment of reckoning. She wasn't fighting only for herself, but for every mother who'd been reduced to a purse with a pulse. Her palm brushed the recorder again, proof kindling for the fire that would burn through lies. But she knew James wasn't the only actor. Under Olivia's perfect smile lurked something colder. Elizabeth felt it in her bones. The daughter-in-law's secret would be crueler still. She stood, smoothed her dress, and turned toward the bridal suite. The war had barely begun, and Elizabeth Harper had never feared meeting an enemy face to face. Elizabeth slipped along the gleaming hall to the bridal room, her heels whispering over stone. The door stood ajar. Bright white light and high laughter spilled out pop music, clinking flutes, the rustle of lace. Inside, Olivia rotated before a gilded mirror, French lace fitted to perfection hair, swept into a diamond-pinned bun. 3 bridesmaids fussed and giggled, flutes of champagne in hand. Olivia's smile was storybook. Her voice was a dagger. In a few hours, she trilled, "I'll have the fortune in my hands. 22 million, and by law, half is mine. James is too naive to know anything." The bridesmaids squealed. Elizabeth's stomach turned to ice. Olivia lowered her voice, smug and bright. "Then I'll file for divorce. My lawyer's ready. I don't have to keep James forever. With that money, I'll start fresh on my terms." Elizabeth's hand tightened on the door jamb. Divorce after pocketing the gift. Olivia wasn't just betraying James. She was hunting Elizabeth's life's work. A brunette bridesmaid chimed in slyly, "What about Mrs. Harper? She acts like she owns the place." Olivia's laugh was glass cold. "Once the money's secure, I'll convince James to put her in a luxury care facility. She won't meddle again. She'll have no say at home or at the company." Laughter burst like needles through Elizabeth's chest. A care facility for her. The woman who had hauled a skyscraper's worth of weight up the ladder. Olivia didn't just want money, she wanted Elizabeth erased. Tears burned, but Elizabeth swallowed them, reached into her bag and slid the recorder on again. Olivia's voice sharpened. "James will do what I say. He's too dependent on Mommy, but I'll fix that. After the divorce, I'll take my share of Harper Real Estate's equity and let the old lady sit in her fancy facility remembering the glory days." Elizabeth squeezed the recorder so hard her palm hurt. She pictured Olivia in her office chair, staking claims to Manhattan towers Elizabeth had bled to raise. The girl had a private lawyer and a timetable. Marriage was merely a ladder rung. Elizabeth stepped back quietly, a shadow in the corridor, and walked away. No scene, no shriek. Strategy. In the nave, she sat once more, her face the portrait of calm. But inside, the storm organized around a center. 2 recordings now rested in her purse, 2 blades. She lifted her eyes to the candle's soft flames gilding the Madonna. "They think I'm malleable," she breathed. "They've made a grave mistake." Guests buzzed about the gown. Elizabeth smiled and nodded. Her fingers found the recorder's weight. Olivia wanted her gone. James enjoyed her to be used. Soon both would learn who held the board. She drew in the incense-scented air. The ceremony would begin, vows would float on stained glass light, and she would wait for the exact moment when truth, not rage, could do the most good. Not to destroy, but to free herself and what remained of her heart. The bells tolled. Elizabeth fixed her gaze on the aisle. Olivia would glide in like a queen, but under that lace beat a greedy heart. With two recordings like twin knives, Elizabeth would decide how this pageant ended. The sting of Olivia's words remained, but pain had become power, the power of a betrayed woman prepared to claim justice. Front row hands laced over her bag, Elizabeth sat beneath the soaring vault as the organ swelled. In her purse, two secrets caught on tape: James's whispers to Sophia, Olivia's plan to cash out and exile her mother-in-law. Colored light fractured across the pews like the splinters of a family she had tried to hold together. She adjusted the cashmere scarf James once gave her, now only cloth. The doors creaked open. Olivia appeared in an immaculate lace train spilling down the steps, gasps and camera flashes. Olivia floated forward, smiling like a princess. Elizabeth saw only the chill behind that smile, the scorn in the bridal room. Each footfall down the aisle was another blade slipping into trust. At the altar, James is wearing a black tie, white tie, gleam groom's glow. Elizabeth heard his earlier words over the organ: "Once my mother's signs were free." The child who cried into her sweater had become a man willing to sell his mother for escape. She steadied herself. Tears were useless. Steel would serve. The priest intoned, "Marriage is a sacred union founded in love and respect." The sentence rang like satire. Faces glistened with emotion. The room believed in a perfect love story. Only Elizabeth knew it was for the theater. James took Olivia's hands. "I promise to love and honor you, share every joy and sorrow, and stand by you all my life." Beautiful, practiced lies. Minutes earlier, he had planned his exit. Elizabeth's jaw set. Olivia's turn. "I promise to care for you, face all trials together, and keep this love forever." Elizabeth's laugh almost rose, caught and stilled. Those sugar vows masked a legal strategy: quick divorce, half the fortune, a slot in a luxury facility for Elizabeth. Does anyone object? The world paused. Electricity ran through Elizabeth's limbs. She could stand now, cry objection, and shatter the vaulted hush. She didn't. Timing is everything. She needed witnesses to hear the truth from the betrayer's own mouths. She folded her hands and let the moment pass. Bells pealed, husband and wife. A kiss. Applause swelled like surf. Elizabeth clapped slow, even her smile serene. Inside, every clap counted down to the reveal. The couple swept up the aisle in triumph. They thought they'd won. They had not accounted for Elizabeth Harper. She rose and followed the tide to the Waldorf Astoria. Her hand brushed the recorder's hard edges. She pictured their voices booming over crystal and silk. Her smile deepened, not with joy, but with certainty. She was not a mother to be managed. She was the woman who built an empire from ash, and today she would turn that strength upon the two who had scorned it. The wedding was not an ending. It was a fuse. The Waldorf's chandeliers cast constellations over white and red florals. Jazz curled through the air. Glasses chimed. James and Olivia shone at the head table hands entwined the picture of love. Elizabeth sat near the small stage silk armor draped in warm, light, flawless wig. In her bag, the recorder was a bullet waiting for the trigger. The MC tapped the mic. A round of applause for Mrs. Elizabeth Harper, mother of the groom, to share a few words. Cheers rose. Faces turned. Elizabeth stood, lifted a flute, hands steady, though her heart hammered like a drum. She smiled the soft smile of a proud mother carried on a blade. "Thank you for celebrating with us," she began, voice clear. "Today is sacred. I've watched my son start a new chapter." Polite applause. She sipped, let the dry echo fade. "For 33 years I've lived by a promise. When my husband died, I vowed to protect James and make sure he never faced the lack I knew." Heads nodded. Warmth flickered. "And today," she said, "I intended to give my son and daughter-in-law a special gift, $22 million, the work of a lifetime." A ripple of gasps. James's smile faltered. Olivia's eyes sparked like cut glass. "But life has taught me that not every sacrifice is appreciated, and not everyone deserves the gifts you place in their hands." The air thickened. James half rose. Elizabeth lifted a palm. Sit, James. She set the recorder on the linen. Its red light blinked. Before I decide, there are truths everyone should hear. She pressed play. James's voice filled the room. Once my mother transfers the money, everything changes. We won't have to hide. Just be patient, Sophia. The room exhaled all at once. Mouths fell open. Heads turned. James went pale. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Elizabeth asked softly. Whose voice is that, James? She tapped again. She always wants to please me. Once she signs this afternoon, we'll have everything freedom. No strings. The buzz swelled to a hornet swarm. Sweat beaded on his brow. I was joking. A joke. Elizabeth's head tilted. You call plotting to betray your own wedding a joke? She turned to Olivia, now stiff as marble. Elizabeth held up the pinned scrap. Congrats at last, a hairstyle appropriate for your age. Enjoy my wedding. You shaved my head while I slept a cheap humiliation on the morning of my son's marriage. Olivia lurched up, flushing. That isn't mine. You're inventing a shame, Elizabeth said. I also overheard the bridal suite you divorce after a few months take half and consign me to a luxury facility. I heard it all, and I have proof. Silence fell like a curtain. Olivia trembled, words failing. Phones rose around the room recording. Elizabeth lifted her glass, her voice the strike of a gavel. Accordingly, I am canceling the $22 million gift. Neither of you has earned a cent of what my sweat bought. A wave of whispers broke. James collapsed into his chair, face in his hands. Olivia stood frozen, eyes wild. Elizabeth set down the glass. The greatest wedding gift I can offer tonight is the truth. Greed and betrayal do not win. She turned and stepped from the stage. Chairs scraped, voices erupted behind her. Her steps were light. The trembling woman in the morning mirror was gone. In her place walked the one who had just torn 2 masks away in full view. The war wasn't over, but momentum had shifted. Chaos churned in the Waldorf after Elizabeth's speech. Whispers, scraping chairs, and stunned stares followed her into the marbled hall. As she walked, chandeliers shimmered over navy silk, but the light could not soften the storm inside her. She had played the recordings, produced the note, severed the fantasy. Yet she knew the endgame still waited. She stopped before a nocturne of the city towers, lit like embered teeth. It reminded her of nights she'd traded sleep for deals for James's ease. Footsteps pounded behind her. Mom, James's voice cracked. He stumbled up, tie askew, eyes rimmed red. Please don't do this. He grabbed her hand, fingers shaking. She looked into those eyes and saw the child who once sought safety there, and the man who had weaponized her love. She slipped her hand free. What would you have me do? Her voice was soft and iron. Pretend I didn't hear you plotting with Sophia. Pretend you weren't going to use my money to abandon your bride. I didn't mean, it was just, he stammered. Don't turn betrayal into banter, she said, blade calm. You think I'm foolish enough to believe that? Before he could answer, a shriek sliced the air. Olivia hurtled from the ballroom, French lace skimming stone, glamour shattered hair, loose mascara streaked. You ruined my wedding, she screamed, jabbing a finger. You made it up. You're jealous. I married James. Elizabeth stood granite-eyed. She lifted the note. Jealous. Then, whose handwriting, whose rose perfume, and how about your rehearsal in the bridal room? Divorce for half, and a berth for me in a nice facility. Olivia lunged for the paper, but Charles, an old partner of Elizabeth's, stepped in steady. Enough! We heard it, Olivia. How will you deny it? Olivia crumpled, sobbing mascara, smearing. Her parents, hovering near the doors, didn't rush to comfort. Her father stared at the floor. Her mother shook her head, disbelief curdled into shame. For a beat, Elizabeth's heart pricked, not for Olivia, but for parents watching a child torch her own future. James spun on Olivia, voice shaking with fury. You were going to divorce me for the money. Olivia whirled back, tears slick. And you're better sneaking around with Sophia. Their voices ricocheted through the corridor, drawing more eyes. Elizabeth watched, a strange lightness flickering, no triumph, relief. They were unmasking themselves. She turned toward the exit. Mom, don't leave me. James caught up, voice raw. I know I was wrong. Give me a chance. I'll change. Elizabeth stopped and faced him. Tears streaked his face. She did not yield. I gave you chances for a lifetime, she said evenly. You threw them away. Now you live with the consequences. She touched his shoulder, gentle final, and walked on. His sob knifed the air. She didn't look back. Outside, the city's cold bit clean. She slid into the Bentley and watched trickles of guests drift out. No more laughter, no more photos, just smoke-thick silence. She closed her eyes and drew one long breath. The curtain was down, and though her heart ached, she had reclaimed the stage. James and Olivia could keep tearing at each other. She was no longer anyone's puppet. Lights glossed wet streets. A new chapter waited, and it would belong to Elizabeth Harper this time. Pale morning sifted through the Upper East Side curtains, gilding oak floors. Elizabeth woke to quiet, no wedding clamor, no shouting. She lay still, listening to a silence that felt like space, not absence. She would have to shape a life that did not orbit the role of sacrificial mother. In the kitchen, she brewed coffee, the rich smell filling the rooms she once furnished around James's needs. She set a white rose cup on the table and opened an old ledger, tuition funds, housing help, and the now canceled $22 million. One by one, she drew a red line through each entry. Every stroke did more than erase a number. It severed a cord. She called Thomas Reynolds. I thought you'd be resting, he said gently. Yesterday sounded eventful. It was clarifying, she replied. We rewrite the will. We void every transfer. 10 o'clock, I'll be there. Thomas's office smelled of paper and resolve in a brick building downtown. He listened while she sketched the night the note James's call Olivia's bridal room boasts. He folded his hands. You were right to call first the will. James is no longer heir. Where do you want the estate to go? To a foundation, she said without hesitation, for widows and single mothers starting businesses. They know what money means and how to build with it. And the trust for James terminated. No further disbursements, not $1. For hours they combed through clauses and accounts. She signed page after page, each signature a cut that released her from the role of human ATM. At the last page she sat back, lungs filling thoroughly for the first time in years. Thomas smiled, tired and kind. This isn't easy, but freedom often starts with a hard line. You just drew one. Back home, she studied the family photos James as a child beaming at the Hamptons. She had kept them as proof of mother love. Now they were simply artifacts. She lifted each frame, laid them gently in a box, and slid it into a closet. She wasn't erasing the past, just refusing to be chained to it. That afternoon, she drove east to the sea.